Hi everyone, Katie with Trans Refuge. So last night was the opening night for Matrix Resurrections in my area, and I went and saw it. So I'm going to give you a warning up front. I'm going to talk about some things from the plot of the movie. So if you're planning on seeing it and you don't want any spoilers, maybe wait to watch this video. So, my impression. I loved it. I thought it was an amazing movie. Now, I will say, after watching it, that I can see how there is going to be a lot of division in the fan base based on the way that Lana and her team, Lana Wachowski and her team, chose to write and film this movie. It was stylistically pretty different from the previous three movies. I appreciated it. I thought that the difference in the way that it was scripted and shot, you know, and even the pacing of everything, I thought it worked very well. However, if you're expecting the same thing that we had in the last three movies, this movie might disappoint you because this is a different story. It's a different kind of story. So what do I mean by that? So the last three movies were more about overcoming a system of control, and it was about philosophy, and it was about, you know, action and war and battle and fighting and, you know, and all this stuff. Matrix Resurrections is really more about the relationship between Neo and Trinity, the love they have for each other, the connection that they have to each other. You know, and it was also about the culture of the outside world. So as you watch the movie, you'll discover there's now a city called Io, and that's Niobe, who is Jada Pinkett Smith, is the leader of that city. So it's kind of like the new Zion. And she has some pretty harsh feelings about Neo being back. And, you know, so there's a little bit of story there about she doesn't want a repeat of what had happened before. You know, the benefits to their current world came at such a high cost, she doesn't want to see that happen again. So there's some of that going on. And then the other thing that was kind of obvious in the scripting and the portrayal by the characters was how society and culture influences the way we see ourselves and what we feel should be our life's ambitions and what direction our life should go. So an example of that would be where Trinity, you know, she has this discussion with Neo. She has kids now. She's married and she has kids. And, you know, she makes this comment about, you know, I don't really know if I wanted to have kids. I just, you know, maybe I felt like society just kind of programmed me to go that direction. And, you know, so there's that. And then there's definitely a trans allegory, which I felt was very obvious in the movie. You know, one was that, excuse me, both Trinity and Neo appear differently to everyone else than they do to themselves. And you'll see this at various points in the movie where they'll see a glimpse, or actually you, the audience, see a glimpse of how they look to everyone else. And it looks different than what they look like, you know, on screen. But they themselves don't realize they don't look that way. That to themselves, they look like what we think of as Trinity and Neo. And you know, that definitely plays into the whole like self-image of trans people and you know, gender dysphoria, that, you know, looking in the mirror and seeing an appearance that doesn't match how you know you are, you know, internally. So like that was a definitely clear allusion to gender dysphoria, you know, in a very visual sense. The other thing that I noticed was there's a scene where it's right where Trinity is like going to wake up, and her husband is trying to drag her out the door, and he's calling her Tiffany, you know, and she just has this moment where she just, don't call me that name. I always hated that name. You know, to me, it just seemed really obvious that was like about dead names, and, you know, that if you have a very gendered name, you know, say you're female to male, you're a trans-masculine person, and your dead name, or the name that you were assigned at birth, you know, is like, I don't know, Lucy or something, you know, something that is very traditionally considered to be female, you know, and you, over time, you develop a hatred for that name because it's associated with a gender that isn't you. You know, and so I could tell, like, Lana and the script writers, you know, they definitely made a point of having that in the movie. So that was kind of obvious. Like, you know, I kind of had to chuckle when when I saw this stuff in the movie. You know, I suppose a lot of the, you know, the fan base who are not trans that go and see this movie, they may not catch this stuff, but, you know, as a trans person myself, it seemed pretty obvious. You know, but there was a lot more in the movie about society and culture and the way that it shapes our lives and the choices we make, and even the choices that are made for us, rather than, you know, somebody breaking free and going on this heroic journey and battling the robots and, you know, the stuff that we saw in the first 3 movies. This was more about somebody, I think, like, well, one of the things is, like, you know, in the first movie, like, the first, like, 10 or 15 minutes is, like, Neo trying to figure out, like, why does everything seem wrong? You know, and then you have, like, the scene with Morpheus where he's like, you know, there's something like a splinter in your mind, you know, and then he takes the red pill. You know, it's just a very short part of the movie. In this movie, you know, I think that they chose to spend a lot more time looking at that internal conflict, you know, because Thomas Anderson, who is Neo, has been experiencing these, what he's being told are psychological problems. You know, he keeps having these feelings and these thoughts and these memories. And he has this psychologist, or he calls it an analyst, who's, you know, giving him explanations for, oh, well, you know, that's your mind, you know, trying to cope with, you know, X, Y, and Z. You know, it didn't really happen. It's not real. It's just your mind trying to cope with certain things. So there's a lot more of that that's explored in the movie. You know, it's a lot more personal, I guess I would say. So I really liked the movie. I thought it was amazing. And keeping in mind what Lana and the scriptwriting team and everybody was trying to achieve with the movie, I felt that the way it was shot and the way it was scripted and everything, I thought worked together wonderfully. I know some people are complaining. I thought it was great. Now, I'll get to the negatives. These are things I think could have been done better, or maybe some improvements. To me, it seemed like, you know, Lana and, you know, the scriptwriting team and the editing team had really big ambitions for this film. And I think that their original idea for the plot probably was a lot bigger. There's a lot more to be expressed. And you kind of get that feeling in the movie, like that there were things that were cut out and there were bits that were chopped and characters that weren't developed as deeply as you felt like they should have been. I personally feel like this could have been 2 or 3 movies with more expansion on character backstories, history. It just seemed like it was a little fragmented, and that was a little frustrating. It wasn't enough that I like hated the movie or anything. I just said I loved it. But I think now that it's out, and this is now part of the movie canon, if I were Lana Wachowski and if I were even Warner Brothers, I would start thinking about expanding the Matrix universe and having some I guess maybe some parallel media formats or something that's going to explore those other characters. Maybe another movie, maybe some video games. Find some ways, because, like, for instance, Morpheus was really not explained. That was kind of frustrating. Like, he just kind of shows up in a bathroom stall. And then he starts talking about, like, a modal. Well, what's a modal? And he talks about being trapped in it. None of that was really shown in the movie. And I think that could be very deeply explored. Same with Bugs. She talks about how Neo set her free because she saw him walk off the edge of a building. But then that's it. We don't see how she was freed. We don't see her coming out of the Matrix. We don't see any of her background other than that. The Synthients. Those are the beings that were composed of, like, little tiny particles. Who are they? It talks, there's like one scene where it says that it was when Neo had that scene with Deus Ex Machina, that was a Synthiant. Okay, so now we know, like, there's multiple races of robots, and there's these Synthients that are like friendly with humans. Like, some more backstory on that would have been great. Excuse me. Same with Sati. She appears in the movie, and she's like, oh, you've destabilized the Matrix because you escaped. And then she's like, yeah, my mom and dad were purged, and so now, like, I'm here to fix this. Why are you here? Why is this important to you? Why? That would have been great to have a little more depth to her character. And then there's scenes in the movie, because she's like, yeah, I tried to keep an eye on you over the years. There's like these little flashes of her, like, in a coffee shop with a book and stuff. And, and they're really short. And you can tell that, like, there was meant to be some dialogue between the two characters and some character development with, like, Neo walking into the coffee shop, many times over several years, and seeing her sitting there, and, like, they were supposed to be friends or something. And, like, you can tell they just edited all that out and just, like, oh, yeah, I kind of popped up here and there. So that I felt was too short of an introduction for this character. Same with, Chad, the husband of Trinity, and her son, and apparently there was a daughter, because, like, that's when the husband comes to get her. Is like, oh no, our daughter's been hurt and we got to go get her. Like, a little more information about what was happening in these people's lives, and it would have been great. And so now that this movie's out, I think what Warner Brothers and Lana and whoever else needs to do is start filling in these gaps and really expand what's there. And because it does seem kind of fragmented and disjointed. So those are my thoughts on it. I thought it was a great movie. Like, you know, even with those frustrations, I do recommend it. I thought it was a great movie. It is a love story, you know, and Keanu Reeves said that in an interview. It's a love story. It really is. But I think everybody will find something in it that is applicable to their lives. Like, you know, there are a couple scenes where, like, Neo's being told he's got to make this new video game, and he's also has this discussion with his partner in the business, his business partner, who turns out to be Agent Smith. I had my annual performance review with my employer yesterday, like just hours before I saw this movie. And portions of those interactions was like, I just lived this out like just a few hours ago, and you know, and here it is in this movie. So I think everybody would find something in this movie that they'll like. You know, the only thing I'll say is just keep in mind that what Lana and her team were shooting for in this movie wasn't the same thing as the previous three. It's really not, it's not a suspense movie. It's not about, oh no, are they going to save Zion? Are the robots going to destroy Zion? And, you know, it's a love story. And it's a movie to make you think about how the world around you influences you. So, if you go see it, I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy this movie, because I thought it was great. And until next time, have a great week and happy holidays. Bye.